Hi guys, I'm Rick. Before we start, subscribe to the channel and leave your like, because today's video is going to be insane. The story begins intensely. A man is undergoing extreme training, being pushed to his limits. Every blow, every movement brings him closer to his physical and mental limits. The fear of not surviving this journey is on his face. But, watching from a distance, a group of researchers follow his progress closely. They see the improvements he has made over the years and happily conclude that the E-rank promotion test will not be a challenge for him. Soon afterwards, registration for the long-awaited E-rank test begins. Among the candidates is Rick, our protagonist. When he arrives to register, he is greeted by Alyssa, the guild's receptionist. She greets him enthusiastically, surprised to see him again after 2 years. The last time they met, Rick was still a simple guild worker. Alyssa is surprised to discover that Rick has become an adventurer, especially as he is already 30 years old. Starting an adventuring career at that age is almost unimaginable. Most adventurers start as F-rank apprentices in their teens and reach E-rank in about 2 years. Curious about what Rick has been up to, Alyssa asks where he's been all this time. Rick replies that he has spent the last 2 years training in the mountains under the guidance of experienced adventurers. In the middle of the conversation, everyone's attention is diverted by a drunk man who tries to approach Alyssa in a disrespectful manner. Without thinking twice, Rick intervenes and resolves the situation with ease. The incident draws the attention of everyone in the place, and Rick takes the opportunity to remind everyone around, "Remember to drink in moderation." With the situation under control, Alyssa hands Rick the ticket for the E-rank exam and wishes him good luck with the test. After receiving his ticket for the E-rank test, Rick couldn't help but feel a little worried. The number on his ticket was 4,242, a number that seemed to have a useless and even unlucky meaning. Outside, he meets a girl called Rionette and informs her that he has finished registering for the test. She, however, quickly pulls him back to reality, reminding Rick to pay attention to where his eyes were focused. Back at the guild, something unexpected happens. Everyone in the hall is surprised to see a handprint left on the iron armor of the drunk Rick had calmed down moments before. And that's not all. The armor is not ordinary. It belongs to Domo, a very famous former E-rank adventurer known as the Fiendish Knight, who also has a long list of crimes to his name. The strength required to leave a mark on iron armor is something that many can't even imagine. Alyssa, shocked, begins to wonder, has Rick really become so strong that he can do this with ease? Over time, Rick moves on to the stages of the test. First, his height is measured, and the examiners are even more surprised to discover that he is 32 years old. For them, it's unusual to see someone of that age taking part in a promotion test for adventurers. Then, the magical energy test begins. Participants place their hands on a crystal ball to measure their power. Some candidates receive moderate results, such as D, while one girl surprises with a grade of C+. Then it's Rick's turn. When he touches the crystal, the light generated is weak, almost non-existent. He gets an Fe, the lowest possible grade. The other participants look at Rick with pity, wishing they didn't end up like him. Rick walks away, trying to process what has happened, but suddenly something unexpected occurs. The crystal he touched breaks. The examiner stares in shock, unable to understand what really happened. The next exam puts the participants to the test in a more physical way. They have to strike a device designed to measure the force of their blows. This device, known as the Emerald Bag, is designed to absorb incredibly powerful attacks, so the participants are warned that they don't need to hold back. A glimpse into Rick's past reveals the rigorous training he underwent, where he learned that the human body is the true basis of a good fighter, regardless of the weapons or magic one may have. Rick was taught to destroy the emerald sack with his bare hands. His mentor explained that by succeeding in breaking it, Rick would have built a body that he could trust completely. However, this was no ordinary sack. The emerald sack is as tough as a dragon's teeth, something that seemed impossible to Rick at first glance. At the time, Rick doubted that he would be able to accomplish such a feat, but his mentor reassured him that it was something an experienced adventurer could do with ease. He even showed some of his own power, destroying 200 bags with a single movement. Since then, Rick has been instructed to hit the emerald sack 50,000 times a day, a grueling training that has put his body to the test. Back in the present, the exam continues, and one of the participants impresses everyone by attacking the bag with a powerful strengthening magic, leaving the spectators in awe. Soon after, a small boy steps forward, declaring that the time has finally come to show his strength. He's not just anyone, he's the Duke's second son, and rumor has it that, despite being only 11 years old, he possesses the magical power of a C-rank adventurer. The boy prodigy begins to prepare his attack with great confidence, and his combat equipment displays an impressive show of power. When the attack finally takes place, the result is surprising. A small fireball is launched. But despite the modest size, the damage caused by the attack is devastating, leaving everyone around in shock. People start calling him a genius, impressed by the destructive power that the small attack has generated. Rick was also surprised by the boy's skill, who used a level 3 composite strengthening spell linked to nature. This reminded him of his own training, where he had faced a devastating fire attack from a small boy. Although both attacks were empowering, they were noticeably different. Rick began to wonder if the boy had compressed his magic to work better in an enclosed environment. Soon it was Rick's turn to take the test. The examiner, however, doesn't expect great results. He reminds Rick that if magic isn't trained from a young age, the chances of developing it later are practically nil. Considering Rick's poor performance in the previous test, the examiner suggests that he give up. Rick somewhat agrees with the examiner's reasoning, but can't ignore the time and effort he has put into his training. Rick recalls the exhausting days of training when he felt physically and mentally drained, but he never gave up. He knew he had a late start on his journey as an adventurer, but he never believed that age should be an obstacle. Determined, Rick prepares himself and, in a single blow, completely destroys the emerald sack, shocking everyone present. Rick, however, is left in doubt. He wonders if the bag was defective, so surprised by his own strength. The crowd, on the other hand, is terrified, not knowing who this man really is. The boy who had impressed them earlier is furious, believing that Rick has stolen his attention, but he decides that he will have his chance to shine in the next test of defensive skill. Soon after, Rick shocks everyone again by blocking a level 4 compound spell, something the boy prodigy was unable to do. The examiner, impressed, asks Rick how he managed to block such a strong attack using only a level 1 defense spell. Intrigued, the examiner decides to increase the challenge and uses a level 5 attack spell. He suggests that Rick use something stronger than his basic defense. However, Rick surprises everyone again by revealing that he only knows how to use level 1 magic, both for attack and defense. Even so, he assures the examiner that he'll be fine. The examiner, still skeptical, walks away, convinced that Rick is underestimating the difficulty of the next challenge. The examiner decides not to hold back his strength and starts casting his magic. He launches a powerful level 5 attack, surprising everyone around with its immense power. Even some night warriors in the distance were shocked by what they saw. This examiner's name is Sylvester, and he quickly rushes into the arena, incredulous that such a strong attack was used in a simple exam. Upon arriving, Sylvester searches for information about Rick and discovers that he managed to block the level 5 attack using only a level 1 defense spell. At first, he believes that this must all be some kind of joke, but he is quickly informed that there is no mistake. Rick, a 32-year-old adventurer, was able to accomplish such a feat. Rick's report reveals that he worked for 13 years as a receptionist for a guild, which leaves Sylvester even more intrigued. He has no idea what a receptionist does, but he begins to wonder if Rick's title could only be given to someone who has defeated a dragon. After the written exam, Rick feels confident that he has done a good job. But then he is approached by Freed, the boy wonder who is visibly annoyed. Rick barely remembers him and, seeing him furious, assumes that the boy is lost. and offers to help him find his parents. Freed, however, is furious that Rick stole all the attention during the test. Before Rick can react, Angelica, Freed's older sister, shows up, angry that Rick has made her brother cry. Freed, confused and still upset, says that the 40-year-old man beat everyone in the exam. Annoyed by the comment, Rick immediately corrects him, saying that he's only 30. Angelica, however, believes her brother and challenges Rick to a duel. Rick, surprised, just points out that she knocked his glasses off. But Rionette soon explains to him that, in the kingdom, picking up the glasses means formally accepting the challenge. It's not long before the two are in the arena, ready to duel. Angelica declares that she must punish the old man. In the kingdom, duels allow each participant to propose a condition for the loser. Angelica suggests that the loser must serve Victor until the end of his life, a condition that Freed supports enthusiastically. She reveals that she is a second-class knight, which surprises Rick. This means that Angelica has the same level of skill as a B-rank adventurer, making the duel much more serious than Rick expected. B-rank adventurers are known for their ability to defeat monsters single-handedly, which makes them incredibly powerful. Even so, Rionette tries to calm Rick down, reminding him not to panic. Rick, however, believes she is wrong, pointing out that he is only an F-rank adventurer, registered a few days ago. He fears that this duel could cost him his life. Rionette, for her part, reassures him, telling him to trust the training he has undergone over the last 2 years. At that moment, Rick is flooded with memories of his grueling training, where every day was a fight against his own limits. Although the memory inspires him, he also remembers how difficult it was, and, for a moment, feels like giving up. Rionette urges him to be more confident, reminding him that he was trained by the Recap-Kun Fist, the strongest group of warriors on the continent. For them, Rick is considered one of the members, and this makes him regain some of his confidence. Rick thanks Rionette for restoring his resolve and prepares to face Angelica. She, for her part, is aware that Rick is an F rank and therefore promises not to take the fight to extremes. Even so, Rick realizes that she is the kind of knight who strengthens both her body and her weapons, which makes her a formidable opponent. Angelica, curious to see if Rick can keep up, surprises him by using her incredible speed to move towards him. Rick, shocked by her speed, remains silent, not knowing how to react. Angelica's brother, Freed, watches the scene with a smug smile, commenting that his sister is known as the Flash because of her impressive speed. Angelica then declares that she's not going to hold back any longer and launches into another extremely fast attack. However, Rick remains calm. What seems like an incredibly fast move to everyone else, he perceives as slow. He wonders why anyone would call her Flash if she moves so slowly in his eyes. Rick lands a blow with ease, but Angelica believes it was just luck, as only first-class knights can react properly to his speed. Convinced that Rick won't be able to dodge again, Angelica prepares for a second attack. Rick is once again impressed by the slowness of her movements. He begins to question whether Angelica achieved her position by merit or whether it was through some kind of favoritism. For a brief moment, Rick even considers the possibility that she might actually be strong, but then laughs it off as unlikely. When Angelica leaps towards him again, Rick prepares for another confrontation. Rick barely manages to dodge Angelica's clumsy attack, and yet he doesn't fully realize what has happened. Unable to read her movements correctly, Rick assumes that the attack was an impressive display of skill. This reminds him that, after all, he is only an F-rank adventurer, and that there is a huge difference in skill between him and a second-rate knight like Angelica. Angelica, on the other hand, realizes that she missed the blow, but decides to pretend that it was intentional. Determined to win, she declares that she will attack again, and this time she will move even faster. Her next attack will be so powerful that she can only use it 3 times. When she advances, supposedly faster than before, Rick still sees her movements as slow. Even so, he remains cautious, fearing that another unexpected attack could come at him at any moment. He moves carefully, worried that any mistake could be fatal. Angelica, for her part, begins to feel uncomfortable. She realizes that Rick is avoiding her attacks more easily than she expected. Now, there are only 2 of his special moves left, and she knows she can't afford to waste them. Determined, Angelica uses her last 2 attacks in quick succession. It's then that Rick realizes that he needs to counterattack. When Angelica advances one last time, Rick prepares to strike back. Angelica's attack is impressive, but to Rick, it still looks like a poorly executed technique. He believes that if he's not careful, his counterattack might not arrive in time. However, when the dust settles and the shadows dissipate, everyone present is shocked to see the devastating impact of Rick's attack. A huge crater has opened up on the floor of the arena. Angelica, completely stunned, realizes that if she hadn't dodged at the last second, Rick's blow would have been catastrophic. For his part, Rick believes that Angelica purposely threw herself to the ground to dodge his attack. Confused, Angelica wonders who this man really is. Rick, without any arrogance, explains that he is just an F-rank adventurer who, 2 years ago, was a receptionist at a guild. He admits that he's not sure of his own capabilities and that he doesn't know how much he can do against a second-rate knight. However, Rick is determined to do his best during the duel, seeing it as an opportunity to learn and grow. Rick enthusiastically prepares to continue the fight, but is surprised to see that Angelica is even more shocked than he is. Freed, her brother, also looks incredulous, and Angelica decides that this time she's going to let Rick win. Trying to get out of the situation as quickly as possible, she starts to walk away, but Rick reminds her of the conditions of the duel. He hadn't proposed anything, but agrees to accept the conditions she suggests. Angelica, unwilling to be forced to serve him for the rest of her life, begs at his feet to find the strength and flees the arena. Rick, however, doesn't consider this a real victory. Rionette then approaches Rick, reminding him that the results of the preliminary test are about to be announced. Rick barely has time to react, as he is soon shocked when Rionette reveals that the other members of the group are on their way. Stunned, Rick doesn't understand the reason for this unexpected visit. Rionette explains that they want to see what Rick has been up to lately. A feeling of unease grows in Rick. He knows that something is about to happen, but unfortunately, it's too late. The others are on their way, and Rick can't shake the feeling that this might not end well. We then learn about a legendary hero who tried to defeat the final monster, known as the Kaiser. The reward for this feat would be a treasure capable of granting any wish. However, the hero failed in his mission, but believed that, one day, an adventurer would be able to defeat the monster and claim the treasure. Back in the present, Rick and the other participants are told that the results of the test will be revealed soon. They must wait for their mana cards to arrive. If the card glows blue, they have passed. Those who pass will take part in a mock battle as part of the second phase of the exam. Rionette notices that Rick is nervous and encourages him to be more confident. Their friendship is so strong that Rick jokingly thinks he wishes he were 10 years younger so he could marry her. Rionette, on the other hand, doesn't seem worried about the results of the test. She says that if Rick fails, she will simply triple her training. Rick, terrified at the thought, is relieved when his card glows blue, indicating that he has passed. Happy to have passed, Rick is nevertheless distracted by a terrible smell in the air. It is then that a nobleman called Raster introduces himself, praising Rionette's beauty. Rick tries to be polite and introduce himself, but Raster ignores him, saying that he has no interest in talking to a middle-aged man like Rick. Raster then makes a romantic innuendo, saying that he has left something behind, his feelings of love for Rionette's eyes. He expresses his desire to have her as his wife, but Rick quickly intervenes, declaring that Rionette is his girlfriend. Raster ridicules him for being an F-rank adventurer at his age, but Rick returns the comment, suggesting that Raster looks at least 25. Raster angrily reveals that he achieved E rank at 14 and is now an A rank, as well as being one of the examiners for the second phase of the exam. He tries to convince Rionette to leave Rick, but everyone is surprised when she rejects Raster and confirms that she is dating Rick. Rionette further humiliates him by pointing out that his perfume is repulsive, and Rick realizes that Raster is the source of the bad smell. Humiliated, Raster tells Rick to hope he's not his examiner. Afterwards, Rick apologizes to Rionette for making up that she was his girlfriend, but surprisingly, she doesn't mind. In fact, she's happy that Rick helped get her out of that situation. Meanwhile, Raster begins to hate Rick and vows to make him pay. We discover that Freed and Angelica are Raster's siblings, and they complain to him about the old man who tormented them. This only increases Raster's anger, and he vows never to forgive the man who made his brothers cry. They inform Raster of Rick's exam number, and Raster begins to hatch a malicious plan. The next day, Rionette reminds Rick to control his strength during the simulation battle, but he doesn't understand the reason for this advice. Soon, a man called Lynx appears and explains that he will be in charge of Rick's test in the second phase. Rick is relieved that Raster won't be his examiner. Lynx comments that it's unusual to see someone in their 30s deciding to become an adventurer. Although Rick thinks Lynx is mocking him, Lynx actually admires his determination. Lynx is a middle-aged man, and something about Rick has inspired him deeply. He notices that Rick has a clear goal that drives him, something rare to see. Rick is impressed to see how much Lynx understands him. Lynx explains that it's because the two of them are more alike than Rick realizes. Lynx began his journey as an adventurer at the age of 25 and is now in his 40s. It took him 20 years to reach B rank, and his dream is still to reach A rank. Rick admires Lynx's determination, who, even after all this time, hasn't given up on his goals. This makes Rick feel even more motivated to take the exam alongside him. The two quickly develop a good friendship and even plan to have a drink together after the exam. However, they don't realize that Raster is eavesdropping on their conversation. When Lynx walks away, he reflects on how well-trained Rick seems, just based on the handshake they shared. This inspires him to keep training even harder. However, his train of thought is interrupted when Raster shows up, wanting to have a chat. Meanwhile, Rionette notices that Rick is in a good mood. However, the news quickly changes the atmosphere. The participants in Rick's group are informed that Lynx has gone mad. Rick initially doesn't recognize the name of the new examiner, until Rionette explains that the replacement is none other than Raster, the perfume man they ran away from the day before. She points out that he probably has connections to the nobility they know, and the other participants regret having Raster as their examiner. Everyone is afraid of Raster, known as the Man of 1,000 Mirrors. He is also called the F-Rank Crusher because he likes to torment the weaker adventurers who catch his eye. Rick is terrified because he has not only attracted Raster's attention, but confronted him directly. Elsewhere, Raster demonstrates his impressive power by defeating one of his own elite guards. Rick begins to panic, worried that he has antagonized someone so powerful. He remembers that he is still only an F rank, with limited knowledge of basic magic, and begins to wish he could go home. However, he knows that if he goes back, his training will be tripled, which makes him realize that he's in a no-win situation. No matter what he does, Rick feels that he is doomed. Rick loses confidence as he is constantly criticized for his age. But Rionette, always confident in him, reminds Rick that he can turn these insults into fuel for his own confidence. Although Rick still feels insecure, Rionette unshakably believes in his strength. She is sure that he can defeat Raster and pass the exam. She has trusted Rick from the moment he decided to become an adventurer, and her words restore Rick's confidence. Soon after, a stranger approaches Rick and calls him "young man." He comments that he can see that Rick is fighting for something and offers a fortune reading. Rick hesitates, but the stranger insists, offering the first reading for free. Unable to resist, Rick accepts. However, Rionette soon notices a magic circle on the chair where Rick is sitting. Suddenly, Rick disappears. The stranger reveals that it was all an act and declares himself to be an excellent actor. Furious, Rionette demands to know where Rick was teleported, but the stranger, called Free, refuses to tell her. Rionette, consumed by rage, demonstrates her devastating power by cutting off all of Free's arms with a single movement. In a state of total panic, Free begs for mercy, but Rionette is merciless and threatens to take out one of his eyes. She even lets him choose which eye he loses. Terrified, Free finally confesses that he can only teleport objects 100 meters away, which means that Rick is nearby. Near Rick, he finds himself outside the exam site, surrounded by a large group of men who look serious and focused. One of them, dressed as a butler, approaches and explains that they are the elite guards of the Dartmouth family, a noble family that has an interest in Rick. The butler warns them that they need Rick to sleep for a while. In other words, they want to prevent him from taking part in the exam. Rick, surprised, realizes that he is being played for a dirty trick by the nobility. He can't believe the family is willing to go to such lengths to get in his way. However, the butler corrects Rick, stating that they're not just hindering him, they're fighting him. The butler even reveals that many of them have powers equivalent to B and A rank adventurers. Faced with this revelation, Rick realizes that he has no chance of winning the fight. Just then, a group appears, and Rick is surprised and relieved to recognize that they are the senior members of his team. They ask why Rick is away from the exam site, as he should be competing. The guards, meanwhile, are shocked to see that one of Rick's team members, a large man who looks like an orca, is present. The guards try to confront the big man, but Rick, fearing for the guard's safety, lies, saying that his friends are just trying to help him relax before the exam. The big man offers to help too, but Rick quickly begs the butler to back off with his men, warning that their lives are in danger. The butler ignores Rick's warnings and orders his men to eliminate everyone. One of the guards tries to attack the orca, but everyone is shocked when the guard's sword breaks when it hits the big man's head, which hasn't moved an inch. The big man then praises the guard for strengthening his body, but suggests that he also strengthen his weapons. Another guard tries to land a blow, but gets his hand broken in the process. Surprisingly, the orca heals the guard immediately, and even offers advice on how he can improve his balance during fights. Meanwhile, the other members of Rick's team can see that he is, as always, in trouble, and decide to intervene to solve the problem. The big man's peaceful solution, however, turns out to be rather extreme when he pulls out a huge gun. He explains that it's his latest invention, a gun that shoots crystals infused with magic. The guards try to attack him, but end up receiving a devastating blow from the gun. Rick, desperate, asks him to stop, fearing he's going too far. The big man, however, believes that Rick wants to try out the weapon, which only increases his concern. The big man's peaceful solution, however, turns out to be rather extreme when he pulls out a huge gun. He explains that it's his latest invention, a gun that shoots crystals infused with magic. The guards try to attack him, but end up receiving a devastating blow from the gun. Rick, desperate, asks him to stop, fearing he's going too far. The big man, however, believes that Rick wants to try out the weapon, which only increases his concern. Just then, one of the guards, with a brilliant idea, decides that the best tactic is to take one of the girls in Rick's group hostage. As he approaches her, Rick is terrified, thinking that the guard has a death wish. Even the orca warns the guard to back off, saying that this won't end well. The girl, for her part, is confused and wonders what the guard is trying to do. Rick tries to calm her down, saying that he just wants to play some kind of game. She believes him and asks what game the guard wants to play, but it soon becomes clear that the man's intentions are far more dangerous. He shoots her, and the girl, now furious, unleashes her true strength. Rick realizes that she is ready to fight. In an instant, she completely destroys the fool who attacked her. The other guards are shocked, as the girl has conjured a level 7 spell linked to nature without even using an incantation. The butler, now terrified, finally recognizes who she is, the famous vampire of magic. She is the most powerful magician at only 10 years old and is known as the daughter of the demon of ruin. Her name is Elisarette, and she's not the only famous person in the group. The blonde boy, who looks very young, is actually over 50. He is a half-elf, half-dwarf, and is the best weapons craftsman in the world, using technology that many believe is 1,000 years ahead of its time. His name is Mizet. As for the orc, he possesses a combination of physical strength and superhuman intelligence. He is also a master of support magic, and his name is Brodston. The guards are incredulous to realize that they are all S-rank adventurers, members of the legendary Recap-Kun Fist Guild, a unique group in the world. The butler, who never thought he'd live long enough to see such figures with his own eyes, decides it's time to leave. He plans to spend the rest of his life in peace, and the guards have never seen him so calm before. Meanwhile, Elisarette has fun destroying everyone around her with spells that she utters with a single word. Rick, observing everything, decides that he never wants to train with these insane people again. He vows to do his best to pass the exam and avoid this fate. Back at the exam site, Rionette is still tormenting Freed. Freed, in desperation, wonders how long this will go on, and Rionette simply replies that it will continue until Rick returns. Freed confidently asserts that Rick won't be back, as his family is looking after him. However, he is shocked when Rick casually walks up and greets him with a hello. Rionette quickly throws Freed against a wall, while Rick, confused, wonders what happened to the place. Rionette reassures him that everything is fine and that she only destroyed a small part of the building. Just then, Lynx reappears, explaining that Raster knocked it down. This frightens Rick, as he realizes that Raster did this on purpose to take control of his exam. Lynx confesses to Rick that he shared with Raster his dream of building a school in his hometown, but Raster mocked him, hurting him physically and emotionally. Lynx, powerless in the face of someone as powerful as Raster, now feels it's foolish to have dreams at his age. He fears that Raster will do something much worse to Rick and begs him to abandon the exam. Rick, however, refuses. He declares that he wants everyone to know that it's okay to start making your dreams come true, regardless of your age. Meanwhile, Raster is busy eliminating his own men, and one of the guards informs him that there is an intruder. This makes Raster smile as he realizes that Rick has decided to stay. He expected Rick to have run away, but is pleased with the boy's decision, promising to show him what true fear means. Raster then gives a great demonstration of his magic, while Rick, nervous, still maintains his resolve and declares that he will face Raster no matter what. At this point, a man called Edo observes the E-rank exam and explains to us the 4 fundamental faculties that define an adventurer: physical strength, body control, magic reserves, and magic control. Edo has a special ability that allows him to visualize the levels of these faculties in other people. He demonstrates his ability by analyzing one of the participants and is surprised to see that the participant has A-rank levels. Although impressed, his eyes begin to feel the pressure, as looking at someone so powerful is dangerous for him. Edo then decides to check Rick's levels, but to his surprise, Rick's levels are so high that his eyes almost explode with pain, causing him to scream. Nearby, Alyssa and Rionette meet for the first time. When the other members of Rionette's team call out to her, Rionette invites Alyssa to join the group. Alyssa is shocked to see an orc sitting there, while Rionette kindly refuses Mizette's invitation to sit next to him, knowing that Mizette probably has suspicious intentions. Mizette, now interested in Alyssa, offers her the seat, but Rionette takes her to safety. Meanwhile, Rick finally enters the arena. Brodston asks Rionette how she thinks the former champion will do. Rionette confidently states that Rick will pass the exam, but Alyssa cautiously points out that it won't be easy, as Rick is about to face Raster, an A-rank adventurer. Raster is known for embarrassing champions, and Alyssa fears that Rick is in trouble. Alyssa is surprised when Rick's team members say it won't be a problem. Raster's brothers tease him as he comments that he's impressed that Rick escaped his guards. Raster declares that he is much stronger than his weak men, something Rick can tell just by looking at him. Rick, confused, wonders why Raster decided to become an adventurer. Raster then reveals that he is a nobleman and only became an adventurer to increase his social status. He admits that he's had enough of this life and is just waiting for the right moment to give up. Rick, upon hearing this, decides that he won't lose to someone who isn't a true adventurer. The fight begins, and Raster starts with a level 1 attack. He wonders if Rick is paralyzed with fear, since he doesn't move. However, Rick isn't scared. He just remembers Rionette's advice. Use the first minute of the fight to stay calm and observe your opponent. Rick does just that, while Raster impatiently attacks with a level 3 spell, without an incantation. The attack is incredibly powerful, but Rick holds his ground, analyzing his opponent as Rionette had recommended. Alyssa begins to worry about Rick, but Raster confidently says that such an attack will be nothing to him. Raster then begins to explain about the fundamental faculties, stating that a person's magical reserve needs to be developed before the age of 20, otherwise there is no hope of growth. He mocks Rick, who became an adventurer at the age of 30, saying that Rick's magic reserves must be extremely low. However, Brodston had a solution for this, as a memory from the past reveals. He told Rick that the only thing he could ever rely on was his own body. Brodston then suggested a little trip to the nearest town, but ended up taking Rick to a training camp with giant weights of 100 kilograms each. Rick, startled, was confused until Brodston hurried him along, explaining that they were about to enter a cave full of carnivorous monsters. To compensate for his low reserve of magic, Rick underwent exhaustive training in the other 3 faculties: physical strength, body control, and magical control. Raster, now angry, attacks Rick with a level 4 spell, but Rick once again stands his ground. Brodston reveals that he has essentially rebuilt Rick physically, strengthening his body to the extreme. Although Mazette hates dealing with uncomfortable things, he was responsible for teaching Rick how to control his magic. Mazette accepted this responsibility because she didn't want Rick to become a defenseless target during an attack. Rionette, in turn, taught Rick to control his body, surprising Alyssa, who didn't know that Rionette was much more than she seemed. Rick is now deeply connected to all the training he has received, reaching a power level close to S rank, just like the members of his group. When Raster attacks again, Rionette comments that Rick doesn't realize how powerful he really is. This is because, during his training, the members of the Recap-Kun Fist always told Rick that any F rank should be able to perform such feats with ease, like bringing down a giant cave with a single punch. As Raster launches a series of attacks, Alyssa worries when one of the blows seems to hit Rick full on. Raster laughs, thinking he overreacted a little, but is soon surprised when Rick reappears, unharmed. This angers Raster, and his brothers are stunned by the strength of the old man. Raster decides to end the fight with a direct attack using his arm, but Rick repels him with ease. It's at this point that Rick finally understands what Rionette was saying. Raster is obsessed with the natural talents he was born with, but has never dedicated himself to refining or deepening them. He has huge reserves of magic, but is careless in everything he does. Against an opponent like Raster, Rick realizes that he can't lose. Raster, still arrogant, insists that Rick was just lucky. His brothers are shocked when Raster finally decides to use all his magic with a full incantation. He conjures up a huge fire attack, but everyone is stunned when Rick blocks it with just one hand. Rick comments that the attack was exaggerated. Mazette explains that Rick used such precise magic control that he managed to block the attack without spending even 0.01% of the energy that Raster used to create it. This demonstrates that even someone with limited magical reserves like Rick can achieve great feats with refined magical control. Raster, still insisting that Rick was lucky, goes for another attack. However, Rick is too fast for him, and Raster is forced to turn his body into iron to avoid being destroyed. Finally, Raster admits that Rick has skills beyond any level, but still claims that luck is on Rick's side. Rick, incredulous, points out that he wasn't even using magic, just body control. Intrigued, Raster asks how Rick managed to become so strong in just 2 years. The question insults Rick, who immediately remembers his brutal training. He had to run through explosions, swim in poisonous monster fluids until he was paralyzed, and could only leave a dragon cave after defeating them. Alyssa, shocked to hear about the training Rick endured, comments that an ordinary person would never survive that. Her surprise only increases when Raster, with a grim smile, reveals that Rick really didn't survive those challenges. Rick, on his training journey, lost his life several times. However, thanks to Raster's unique magic, which can bring someone back to life if used immediately after death, he was always revived. This frightening method of training, which involved the continual repetition of destroying and rebuilding the body, was essential in making him stronger. Mizette was also impressed by Rick's resilience, who never gave up, no matter how absurd the training became. In his recollections, Mizette recalls moments when he threw Rick down a mountain so that he could develop the ability to feel the wind. Of course, this resulted in Rick dying repeatedly, with Brodston reviving him each time. Elisarette, although she felt guilty about this kind of training, was also part of this journey, throwing Rick into dangerous situations under the mountains. Rionette's training was also brutal, teaching Rick to cut down falling trees on the move, which also led to Rick's death more than once. Raster, however, doesn't believe any of it. He thinks Rick is lying, as he refuses to accept that such terrible training could exist. Even if it did exist, he can't understand how anyone would be motivated enough to go through it. Rick's answer is simple. His dream keeps him motivated. He dreams of defeating the most powerful monster in the world, Kaiser El Cepieto. Raster and Fried laugh, calling Rick a fool, unable to believe he's serious. However, Elisarette knows that Kaiser El Cepieto is the ultimate monster mentioned in the legends of the Yamato hero, and Brodston reveals that Rick's goal is also the ultimate goal of the Recap-Kun fist group. Raster, still laughing, says that the legends of the Yamato hero are just children's stories, and that defeating El Cepieto is a silly dream, worthy of a child. Rick, unshaken, says that what Raster thinks makes no difference, as his dream has nothing to do with him. Agreeing to end the battle, Raster decides to use his full power. Surprisingly, he invokes a level 7 spell to restrict Rick, warning that this is nothing compared to what's coming next. Raster, determined to show what true talent is, begins a long incantation, promising to demonstrate the greatest magic a human being can achieve, level 8, compound magic. This is the greatest weapon in the arsenal of Raster, known as the Man of 1,000 Mirrors. His final move involves controlling a huge tree golem, which he summons from the ground. Raster commands Rick to retreat, believing that he will attempt some kind of aerial attack. However, Rick calmly replies that he will attack directly. Raster, scoffing, considers the idea delusional. Rick then asks Raster how many times he has practiced with the golem. Raster admits that he hasn't used it many times, only a few. Surprisingly, Rick reveals that he has practiced his air attack 100 million times. Raster's brothers think Rick is lying, while Alyssa wonders if such a number is physically possible in just 2 years. Brodston then explains that it is possible, but only with the use of space-time magic. Tired of the taunts, Raster announces that it's time to destroy Rick's dreams, just as he did with Link's. Raster launches his most powerful attack, but Rick unexpectedly breaks the restraints that were holding him back and, with one precise move, neutralizes Raster's attack with his level 1 aerial shot. Raster, confident that he will win, can hardly believe his eyes when his golem begins to disintegrate, shattering before his eyes. Rick's aerial shot hits with precision and completely destroys Raster's golem. Incredulous, Raster can't accept that something like this could happen to someone of his nobility. His golem is destroyed and he is thrown away, falling awkwardly to the ground. As he gets up, Rick looks at the fallen nobleman and declares that his dream remains intact and indestructible. Everyone around is surprised to see Rick as the victor, especially as he still appears to be an ordinary man. Rick's group quickly congratulates him on his victory, and Rick finally begins to realize how much stronger he really has become. Until this moment, he hadn't been fully aware of his own strength. Grateful, he expresses his gratitude to everyone who has helped him on his journey. Meanwhile, they overhear Raster's brothers discussing the need to take Raster for medical treatment, but the nobleman is determined to talk to Rick first. Rick can already see the doubt in Raster's eyes, who clearly doesn't understand how an elite nobleman like him could lose to a beginner like Rick. Fried tries to defend his brother, but is restrained. Rick, however, has only one simple answer for Raster. He explains that his success is due to the fact that he limits the number of techniques he uses and trains each one exhaustively. Rick then offers Raster some advice, suggesting that he do the same to improve his skills. However, Raster is still ashamed of his defeat. Despite everything, Raster promises that he will be Rick's examiner again in his next promotion, and swears that next time, he will be the one to emerge victorious. He walks away with his brothers, but surprisingly, Angelica shows Rick a little respect before leaving. The next day, the participants who passed the E-rank exam await the results, which are announced over a loudspeaker. The numbers of those who passed are called out in order, and Rick waits patiently while his friends stand nearby. Rionette, surprised by Rick's calmness, asks him why he's so calm. Rick, smiling, simply replies that he was remembering something important. That was the summary of the first 3 episodes, where we saw Rick face his fears, master his abilities, and defeat powerful enemies like Raster. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this incredible adventure. There's lots more to come, and you don't want to miss a single detail. See you next time.